Apple's regular iPhone is often overshadowed by the Pro models because they usually recycle last year's design, lack one physical camera on the back, and to make things even more unattractive, they don't use the latest and greatest Apple silicon. But in the case of the iPhone 15 Plus, it seems that Apple realized that people hated the past regular iPhone so much that it decides to make the dynamic island interface as standard, give it better aesthetics and a much better camera system. And after using for a month, I can confidently tell you that this phone is more than sufficient for almost everyone, and you do need to go for the iPhone 15 Pro. But before we begin this video, I want to share a recent unfortunate event which I accidentally formatted my SD card with all of our important raw footages of this video. But it is all thanks to Wondershare's recovery. We are able to retrieve all of them back in one piece. It is a powerful and simple to use data recovery software that will save you from accidentally deleting your files or formatting your storage, especially if you deal with a lot of photos and videos. The enhanced photo and video recovery feature is able to retrieve accidentally deleted content effortlessly, and even if you use different cameras on one SD card, it is able to categorize them properly so you know what to restore. That's not all. You can even recover deleted files on your NAS or Linux-based servers over the network, which is a super cool feature you can't find on other recovery softwares. Can't log into your computer because of a corrupted storage device or operating system? Wondershare Recovery lets you create an emergency bootable disk to recover files from your computer storage. So go check out Wondershare Recovery in the link below to find out how easy it is to save your precious data. Now, I know it's weird for me as a tech reviewer for telling people not to go for the greatest and latest tech stuff, even if you can simply afford it. But the thing is, when there is already a product that's so good that you don't need to spend that extra money, not unless you want to flex your tech purchase. And this is what the iPhone 15 Plus is all about. It's got a screen that's as big as the iPhone 15 Pro Max at 6.7 inches, which feels very visible even when viewed outdoors, and is great for media consumption. And despite that large screen size, it feels lighter than a Galaxy S23 FE that has a smaller display size. Not to mention the rounded corners that simply makes the phone so much better to handle than many large-screen Android phones. And the new matte finish glass resists fingerprints well even on the black-colored model. That's a good first impression for anyone who picks up the phone at the Apple Store demo area. And in the real world, you will be so thankful that your hand doesn't strain if you're typing a long email or text on it. Even though the iPhone 15 Plus is missing the 120Hz ProMotion display that makes everything buttery smooth, I really didn't find that an issue on the iPhone 15 Plus's 60Hz display, as the touch sampling rate is so good with every gestures I perform. Though of course, I would love to see Apple at least including a 90Hz display someday. The most crucial hardware change on the iPhone 15 Plus is obviously the USB-C port, which would seem absurd to consider a mind-blowing feature considering tons of Android phones already have them for the longest time. But compared to previous iPhones, USB-C is really a big deal on the iPhone 15 Plus because you no longer need to deal with stupid MFI lightning cables. And despite only offering USB 2.0 speeds here, this is the only phone with a USB-C 2.0 port that supports DisplayPort output, which means you can mirror your iPhone 15 Plus's display with a USB-C cable or display adapter to an external display without depending on AirPlay or buying Apple's crap expensive lightning adapter. This is super useful for content creators who does game streaming from their iPhone or want to see a bigger live view of the camera for production purposes. And this is one thing that even like the Xiaomi 13T Pro, despite its good video capabilities, doesn't have. I'm also happy to report that the USB-C port of the iPhone 15 Plus takes 30 watts USB PD charging, which juices up the battery way faster than my iPhone 14 Pro. And to give Apple credit, they also included a really nice braided USB-C cable in the box that should age better than rubber-wrapped lightning cables. Although the iPhone 15 Plus isn't powered by the latest Apple silicon, the A16 Bionic is still a very capable processor in terms of performance and power efficiency. There was never a time that I felt the phone overheating when I'm doing a long gameplay, and everything performs snappily as you would expect on an iPhone. Sure enough, it isn't as powerful as the A17 Pro and you don't get ray tracing on games with this chip. But I can tell you that very few people will actually give a damn about that, and you might probably not notice all that lighting detail when you are in the game. I mean, if you're a PC gamer, ask yourselves, since when did you actually care to turn on ray tracing in your game, even if your GPU supports it? iOS 17 has been pretty good to me so far, and to be honest, I haven't faced the slightest bit of bugs that others had in the beginning. There's a whole lot of useful features like contact posters and name drop, but the one thing that I enjoyed the most is standby, which is not an iPhone 15 exclusive feature, but as long as you charge your iPhone using a MagSafe charger or even a USB-C cable and put it into landscape mode, it turns into a very useful bedside or table display. Now, let's talk about cameras, which I think many of you will be surprised to find out how capable this dual camera setup is. First of all, the main 48-megapixel camera is not the same sensor from last year's iPhone 14 Pro, but it is an all-new sensor with a f1.6 aperture and 26mm focal length, though the sensor size is rather small at 1/1.56 inches. This is still a very respectable camera sensor, and it gets complemented by a 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera. One difference that Apple is doing to the iPhone 15's main camera across the board is to allow you to shoot at a higher 24-megapixel resolution, which is great if you want to crop into photos in post, and it works even for dim indoor lighting. And it defaults to 12 megapixels when the camera feels that lighting is too weak, which I think is good so that your pictures will look good every time you hit the shutter button. But at the same time, I wish Apple would have just let you switch between that resolution in the camera app instead of burying deep in the settings. And really, calling the 48-megapixel mode JPEG or HEIF Max just seemed kind of dumb even for a layman. Just put a darn 48-megapixel text and everyone will know what it means. Image quality from the main camera is definitely an A+ quality for me, and it's a great straight out of camera shot whenever you hit the shutter button. Even though it lacks a telephoto lens for portraits, I love how well the photonic engine is doing its job in subject and background separation. And the details on subjects is just incredibly detailed even when shooting in low light. What's even more impressive here is the 2x optical in-sensor zoom, which I think Apple does it way better than any other Android phones that uses the same technique, as it merely crops into the middle 12 megapixel of the sensor to capture a really clear shot. One fun thing about the iPhone 15 Plus's camera is how it is able to let you convert non-portrait photos into one. You simply find a picture with a human subject, tap on Edit, and you will find a portrait button on top to convert it into a portrait photo. And it even lets you do a refocus if you want to. The latter isn't a new thing, as we have seen that way back on HTC phones, but it works just way better and faster. And what's impressive here is the background computational work that the phone is working when you tap on the shutter button, which is very commendable. Video recording on the iPhone 15 Plus is really good with excellent stabilization and colors, though you don't get to record in ProRes as that is exclusive for the Pro models, which I don't really find it to be an issue because shooting in regular MOV format works for most content creators. And I just love how smooth the zoom wheel is because it does an in-sensor crop zoom. You basically don't feel that lens switch jitter when you go into 2x zoom. Otherwise, you still get things such as 2.8K action mode up to 60 FPS and cinematic mode in 4K. It is an overall great video camera that's hard to get on the Android cam. As for the front camera, I find it a little funny that some influencers are complaining that it didn't look good on them. But I personally find it to be okay for my skin tone, and it doesn't over-soften my skin tone. It does get a little noisy when you shoot in low light, but it is pretty common for selfie cameras to be like this. Even when I still have 20% of battery left on the iPhone 15 Plus, I'm still extremely confident that it will last me another 2 hours of regular usage before getting a dead phone. And I can easily get more than 6 hours of screen on time with 5G every time I fully charge it. This is an incredibly good battery life that I have never experienced back on my iPhone 14 Pro, and I would say it is pretty on par with some Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 flagships I have used this year. And USB-C is just a saving grace here because I can finally ditch my lightning cables for good. So after a month, I am super reluctant to switch away from the iPhone 15 Plus despite how enticing my collection of Android phones are. Because it is so flawless, I can't believe I'm saying this, that almost made me no reason to do so. Well, except for the lack of customization on iOS 17 and the flexibility of managing and sending files to my computer. Not to mention the high starting price of the iPhone 15 Plus. Paying close to 5,000 ringgit for a 128GB phone is a lot of money, and you can get a whole lot of flagship phones on the Android cam with at least 2 to 4 times more of the storage capacity, way better camera setups and features. But if you're comfortable to live within Apple's walled garden and upgrading from a really old iPhone like the iPhone 10 or 11, this is a good upgrade if you're willing to spend this much of money on a new smartphone. Alright, so that's all for my review on the iPhone 15 Plus. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below, and be sure to subscribe to us for more videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.